Next, that's questions from Councillor Altaf Hussain to Leader, Cabinet and Cabinet Member Community. Councillor Hussain, I believe you've received a reply response.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
supplementary?
Mr. Mayor. Yes, I received. It's a very long report, a lot of figures, so I am digesting that. Now I'm grateful to Leader, really. You know, Neath Port Talbot Council is looking to invest 5 million from its reserves into the local area as we build out of the pandemic to assist local businesses, support local communities, ensure clean and safe neighborhoods. We all know that councils across Wales, including our council, have shown local leadership and innovation during the pandemic and as we now emerge from it. Leader, it looks like you're trying to build your legacy, although late, by mitigating the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, when everybody is now looking at the legacy that COVID-19 is leaving for our communities. Our Bridgend town is a bit, not a bit really, dead right now, but it was before the pandemic. So it could do with being injected with some new life. Apart from that, what role are you playing as a leader of the council 21-22? Are you going to use the council's resources to help secure the long-term future of our county borough in supporting recovery and reviving our town? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. I can see Councillor Young wants to speak, but I'd love the Leader, Councillor David, would you like to respond first?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Hussain for the question. I'm sure Councillor Hussain will have read the recent report to the Cabinet where a proposal was made, and I was very pleased that we are purchasing the site of the police station so we can bring the college into the town centre. That will deliver, we believe, a record amount of investment in further and higher education, the biggest ever investment in further and higher education in the county borough, in Bridgend town centre, bringing the vibrancy and footfall that undoubtedly that will bring, and then freeing up a brownfield site for redevelopment. And of course, we've only just, as council members, approved the Bridgend heat network, first heat network in Wales, which also closely aligns with our net zero agenda, responding to the other great emergency that we face, that is the climate change. We've said it's an emergency and we've responded in that way. I'm also very pleased, in case members didn't see it, that in the report we've just approved, 2.85 million investment in walking and cycling routes between Bridgend and Pencoed and between Pyle and Porthcawl, as well, of course, as that investment in the Evergreen Hall, another important building in the community of Bridgend, plus yet more investment in ultra low emission vehicle charging points, which are going to be so important, aren't they, Councillor Hussain, to driving that switch from polluting, dirty diesel motor vehicles to cleaner, low energy electric vehicles. So that vision is there. I haven't had time to think about my legacy, my personal legacy. It won't be for me to judge that. That will be for the public to judge that legacy harshly or not next year, judge all our legacy. And of course, we're still, and Councillor Burnett has already referenced it, the pandemic is not over. And we're all deeply concerned about what is coming next with the winter. And I know with your background in the NHS, you will know that winters are hard and tough at the best of time. But unfortunately, we had a very sober report from the Health Board this week. So we're also, as well as looking to the future, and I've highlighted a number of ways in which we're doing that, and the Bridgend master plan, the master plan for Porthcawl, and our exciting plans for Maesteg, including the town hall, as well as the investment in Pencoed and the level crossing. We're also focused as well on the here and now and how we continue to make sure that our residents are safe, because that is still a risk for too many of our residents. Thank you for that question, Councillor Hussain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. We have two supplementaries. We have Councillor Young and Councillor Shaw. So Councillor Young first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think quite frankly that the leader has quite adequately answered the question, but there's a couple more things that I would like to say. I mean, the original question, in actual fact, makes reference to the point that Bridgend did actually increase its council tax last year, but when being compared to Swansea within the original question, there was no mention that Swansea actually put their council tax up by 3% as well. So it's not like for like under those circumstances. And so the second question, that was the supplementary question that has been asked. I think the leaders touched on the majority of what I wanted to say, other than I think what you need to take out of that is the fact that we are investing heavily in the whole of the county borough of Bridgend across its three largest towns, and indeed we're investing in Port Pencoed as well on the basis of looking to close that level crossing, and that will increase the standard of living for everybody living within Pencoed. So it's not that Bridgend is not actually investing in its county borough. I think it's admirable with what it is doing within the county borough, to be perfectly honest with you. And you have to look at that under the terms of, we've had 10 years worth of cuts, and that's the problem as far as I can see, in as much as we could have been in a situation of investing much more in the county borough of Bridgend had we not had those 10 years of cuts forced upon us. Now that wasn't our wish that we had to have those cuts. They were actually forced upon us. And let's not forget that the 2030 agenda that the leader mentioned is going to take a lot of resourcing, because that, in actual fact, is going to change the way that we live our lives, led by this authority. And once again, I'd like to congratulate the authority, because we are one of only two authorities, I think, that are leading the field in the whole of Wales. So my question, Mr. Mayor, is I am concerned about the future. If we did what Neath and Port Talbot are doing at the moment and use reserves, you can only do that once. And my fear about using reserves in that way is the fact that if something does happen, and let's witness COVID at the moment, and you've used up your reserves, you're in a very difficult situation. So the question that I would pose, not only to the leader, but to the council as a whole, given the fact that we've had those 10 years of cuts, how much resilience is remaining within the authority to respond to future cuts, and future cuts that we know will be coming because of the COVID pandemic? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. You got the question in the end.
I did try. I did try.
Could we, the leader?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Young is right. We have been kept to the bone. £60 million worth of cuts cannot be made without it having an impact on frontline services. But I'm incredibly proud of what our staff have done over the last 16 months. We've helped a record number of businesses. 6,500 businesses received over £50 million worth of grants. We've helped a record number of people into work who lost their works as a result of the pandemic, over 400 people. We've helped a record number of people who have found themselves homeless, some of them sleeping on sofas, some of them sleeping on the streets. 600 families we've helped. That's a record number. And that's in addition to 23,000 children and young people we educate in our schools, and the 4,500 people, record number of people that our social services support, in addition to our response to the pandemic. So I think that's a legacy, as all members we'll want to reflect on. And I would add very quickly as well that each and every one of the 22 local authorities in Wales, whether they're led by Plaid Cymru, by the independents, or by Conservatives or by Labour have increased their council tax this year. We don't have the highest council tax increase that is in place in other local authorities. But every local authority in Wales has recognised that these financial pressures have not gone away. In fact, they have increased and they are likely to increase in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Leader, thank you. Are you able to quickly respond on the resilience of reserves about using them? I think that's the question.
Apologies. We've just had a report on the capital programme. We've just had a report on the Treasury management about the level of reserves. If members feel that the reserves are not appropriate, then they will need to raise that formally with our interim chief finance officer, the section 151 officer, who reports on the level of reserves and identify which reserves they want to use. There was an opportunity at the full council meeting where we set the budget, and there continues to be an opportunity if there are proposals about using reserves. We, of course, regularly and routinely on a quarterly basis review the reserves, and where we can, we unwound those reserves, and we obviously invested back in the community. And I once again remind colleagues, even though there were no questions, sadly, we've just approved amendments to the capital programme, and that, of course, referenced the level of reserves that we hold as an authority. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank
you, Leader, for that. Now, we've got a few people indicated, but we were able to take 2 questions. And the next one on the list is Councillor Rod Shaw. So apologies, Councillor Denny, Councillor Williams. We won't be able to come to you on this.
Can I ask for a point of process, Mr. Mayor, please?
Point of process? Can you explain it in further Constitution? Which part, please?
No, it's just a point of process, not a point of order. On a point of process on the questions, we've been previously advised to wait until you ask for supplementaries, and I've previously advised the leader in my regular updates with him as leader of the opposition that this fastest finger first process really does have to stop. So I would crave your indulgence to take Councillor Dendy's question, because I have to say that intervening before you've asked for supplementaries really isn't acceptable. Thank you.
Well,
I just like to agree with that, Mr. Mayor. It's just a case I was waiting here patiently, as I have done on previous questions, for supplementaries to be asked for and 2 supplementaries to be taken before then. So I have to say I am disappointed in that.
Right, if we can hang on there a minute, I should have said, yeah, okay, now ask for your questions. I didn't do that. I was wrong there. So maybe there was one, or maybe 2 hands. Councillor Shaw, I'm not sure exactly when you were handing up, at what point. Kelly, am I allowed to accept 3? It sounds like we got 3 people on.
Can I contribute, Mr. Mayor? I may have a solution for you.
So, yeah, sure, yeah.
I did indicate twice, actually. It went up and down twice, but really mine is more of a comment than a supplementary question. Well, it is partially a question. What I wanted to say was the response was very wholesome and complete, and it's a shame it's restricted to a printed document that will not be recorded in this meeting. So getting that across to the populace of Bridgend County is going to be almost impossible. Is there any way it could be pre-seed and distributed more widely? There you are. So you could say that's not a full.
That's a suggestion, I suppose.
A suggestion, yes.
And we do need to publicise a lot more, I think, of what goes on in simple format.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your tolerance.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I can just come in. Yeah. It's obviously at your discretion whether you take the additional questions. I would have to confirm that usually you do say we'll now invite supplementaries and then call the first 2 who put their hands up at that point. So it's completely in order for you to accept that there'll be an additional supplementary.
Yes, I stand corrected. I should have said that, and I will sort of try to get that clear in future meetings. So, Councillor Dendy, would you like to put your question forward, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Gower Valley is colloquially known as the Forgotten Valley, and the response once again highlights this. Although I fully support the response to the carbon neutral movement and measures mentioned in the PLI in tackling homelessness in our county borough, very little of the reply affects the day-to-day life of the residents of the Gower Valley. A lot of the work being done in my stake, Porthcawl and Bridgend Town Centre, will not be readily accessible to those in the Gower and Ogmore Valley. When I ask what the council has done for the Gower Valley, the leader may mention the new school in Betws, which is a fantastic asset, but not accessible by the rest of the Gower Valley unless they have their own transport, which I pointed out in the last full council meeting is not something a large part of the population of the Valley community has. The Gower Valley is also forgotten about in the LDP, which is currently being consulted on, meaning the chances of change and development in our area is minimum. No commercial areas have been safeguarded in the Valley communities, as well as new areas within the borough. Does the leader recognise these issues, and is he willing to apologise to the Gower residents for feeling what I would rightly say as being forgotten? Thank you.
Andy, what
That's
the
not
question?
supplementary.
The question is the fact that in the response there is nothing about the Gower Valley in there, and it's a case of what in there and what is being done. And in the response to the question about the County Borough in the whole, but the Gower Valley isn't mentioned. So what part of the response back is to in relation to the Gower Valley?
Leader?
Well, we fund Faldai Primary School. We fund Blaengarrow Primary School. The children from the Gower Valley go to Coleg Cymru Dderwyn, a state-of-the-art secondary school that we developed. We have homeless people that we've supported in the Gower Valley. We have many businesses that we've supported in the Gower Valley, and there are many, many people we've supported through the employability scheme that live in the Gower Valley. So I am surprised by that. And there was an opportunity earlier for Councillor Dendy to make a contribution on the capital programme report when actually we were making decisions about investment, but no proposal was made there. I'm happy to listen to members, Councillor Dendy and any other members from the Gower Valley about proposals and plans. And I'm very, very pleased, for example, and I've referenced this a number of times previously, I didn't think that members wanted me to list each and every investment across the county borough, but I'll repeat it again, and I've said it before, that we're developing a new Welsh medium childcare facility in the Gower Valley. That's not something we're doing in every community, but we're certainly doing it in the Gower Valley. And of course, we'd be very interested to hear what proposals that Councillor Dendy has, and we'll consider those, of course, along with any other proposals that are made through the LDP process. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leader. And perhaps Councillor Dendy can contact you directly with their suggestions.
Yeah, I'd welcome that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right, okay, so that's item 14 completed. We'll now move on to item 15, which is the quarterly debate. We haven't had one for a while. The quarterly debate on post-COVID education and family supporting priorities. Councillor Charles Smith, as the Cabinet member, will start off the debate. So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I should mention that from my end, my computer screen is flashing, which I think indicates my laptop is overheating. I tried turning it off for 10 minutes in our break, but it started flashing again. It doesn't usually cause a breakdown, but I thought I'd mention it just in case I go up in a puff of smoke. I've never participated in a quarterly debate before. They haven't happened the time I've been a councillor, so I've had to make some assumptions about how these work. So I'm assuming that this isn't a Q&A session, because we have another council procedure for asking questions, which Councillor Altaf has just used. And I should hope that it's not a substitute for a ward-by-ward blow-by-blow account of things which could be better dealt with through member referrals. I'm hoping that this debate will be at a high level of strategy. So I'll make some very quick opening remarks, then I'll leave it open to the floor. Then I think the procedure is that I come back in and sum up, and then I hand over to the Director of Education to also add some comments. So in general terms, what I think I can say at this stage, that our high-level priorities post-COVID are as follows. Firstly, we'll continue to develop a post-COVID strategy for all schools in the county, building upon the Team Bridgend approach, which served us well before COVID and during the lockdown emergency. We'll make careful note of lessons learned from this current situation in various policy areas, such as arrangements for childcare, the use of hubs, blended learning, provision for free school meals, shielding, internal and external assessments, all of which could well be brought into use again in the case of another or similar emergency in the future. We'll make sure that lessons learned are built into professional development opportunities for staff, governors and local members. We'll promote the physical and emotional well-being of learners and staff. We'll maintain and continuously improve the standards that earned the council as a corporation such a positive ESTIN inspection report before COVID came along. And we'll continue to provide high quality integrated support services, working closely with social services and other delivery partners to support families, especially those most in need. If you ask me personally, my opinion as to what the one most important lesson I've learned or we've learned, if I can speak on behalf of the Cabinet, my opinion is this, that the single most important thing we've learned is the importance of making clear and consistent and sustainable decisions, and then crucially communicating those decisions clearly and consistently and sustainably to the public. And I believe that in Bridgend we've done that successfully. I think that at the regional level through Central South we've done that consistently. I believe that at Welsh Government we've done that successfully. I don't think it's been done so well at the UK government level. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So we have the debate. We have 30 minutes in total. We started at 16:59, so we've got the 17:29. We'll try to make sure we have a broad range of views as possible from all members who want to contribute. We've got 4 people so far. So Councillor Alex Williams, go to yourself first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Smith for his overall remarks, his opening remarks. I'd like to concentrate on the overall strategy for Welsh language education post-COVID in the east of the county borough, and the seeming lack of equality of opportunity and parity of choice for those parents who would like to access Welsh language education for their children. Now, in my view, there's a strong argument to say that the town the size of Pencoed, for example, should have a Welsh language primary school, and I wonder whether Councillor Smith would agree with this long-term ambition post-COVID, given the proposed expansion of the town in the draft local development plan. However, given the unlikelihood of the primary school springing up by September, I'm given to understand that Section 3.5 of the School Admissions Code allows for Cabinet to relax the published admission number of pupils at a particular school if there is a proposal to expand the school, as is the case at Ysgol Bro Ogwr in Bracla. Now, after speaking to Lindsay Harvey, the Corporate Director for Education, at some length yesterday, for which I'm very grateful, he has informed me that this would not only compete with the Welsh Government legislation on reducing class sizes below 30 pupils with a potential clawback of Welsh Government funding, but that it could open a further can of worms in that other oversubscribed schools in the county borough could ask for a similar relaxation in expanding capacity. So I fully acknowledge the difficulty of this situation. However, the overall strategic question remains when it comes to Welsh language education here in the east of BCBC. While I acknowledge that non-statutory free home to school transport is provided, which is a very generous provision, to other Welsh language schools in BCBC, such as Ferchosger in North Connelly, Calon y Cymoedd in Betws, or Ysgol Cynoed Sant in Maesteg, all of these schools are in the west of the county. So I question, where is the fairness when it comes to the provision of Welsh language education for residents in the east? And should parents in Pencoed have to choose between sending their young children up to 12 miles across the county to a Welsh language school, or sacrifice their choice of Welsh language education by opting for English language education instead? So can Councillor Smith liaise with the head teacher of Ysgolbro Ogur and revisit the suggestion that the school can accept more children for this coming intake for this isolated case. Finally, Mr Mayor, is there also a case to define catchment areas for Welsh language education provision in BCBC? For example, at the moment with parental choice, we have parents from Bryn Cefn applying for a position at Ysgolbro Ogur in Bracla, whereas they could easily go to Calan y Cymoedd in Betws. So in this case, the policy of parental choice is actually serving to squeeze out children in Pencoed from accessing Welsh language education at their closest school, and only serving to add to the significant pressure that we already know is on the home to school transport service, because children from Pencoed have to travel such a massive distance across the county to access Welsh language education. I would be grateful if Councillor Smith and the Cabinet could look at this matter urgently. Thank you so much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. As you said, this is not the place for questions, but it's thoughts and suggestions, which you were suggesting the Cabinet consider what you've discussed, which is and we found Councillor Smith to sum it up towards the end. Councillor Ross Pennant-Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Diolch, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to contribute to this afternoon's topical debate, and I can see that this is going to be quite wide-ranging. So I just want to focus on the equality impact of learning through and beyond the pandemic. I think it's proper and right that I start, however, by recognising and appreciating the tremendous efforts of all our teaching and support staff in schools in the local authority over the past 15 months. Being married to a secondary school teacher, you could call me lucky or unlucky to have a special insight into the difficulties faced by schools and those working in and around them. Our staff have risen to the challenge, adapted to the most difficult of circumstances, and put our learners front and centre of everything that they've done. And I know, and we know as members, that there is nowhere a teacher would rather be than in front of learners in a classroom, understanding and soaking up each and every nuance of what's going on around them in a proper learning environment. At the onset of the pandemic, some UK politicians referred to coronavirus as the Great Leveller. Far from levelling out anything, it has laid bare and worsened the deep-seated inequalities that have existed in this country for far too long. And from an education perspective, members will recognise it's all too similar. The inequalities have been laid bare there too. Whether it was initially issues of access to resources, laptops and tablets, for example, or access to a decent internet connection, the capacity of parents and carers to support learning at home, or there being no quiet and suitable space to learn. And for some of our learners, the home environment just hasn't been safe. Added to that, how do you recognise and understand and explain to many younger learners the impact of the curbs on their ordinary life? So let's set out the stall. Education, and it's broadly agreed, is generally thought of as the main engine of social mobility. And whether we like it or not, income levels and educational attainment are inextricably linked. The greater the level of your education, broadly speaking, the more income capacity you have. And at the bottom of that scale, we have families and learners in this county as well across Wales who are all but destitute because of a grossly unfair and complex welfare system. In a survey commissioned by Welsh Government, Mr Mayor, and carried out among learners earlier this year, 61% of respondents said that they agreed or tended to agree with the statement that they were concerned with the future of their education or training prospects as a result of COVID-19. And that's a really stark figure. Behind each response is an individual with hopes and dreams to achieve their own successes. And clearly for too many, they feel those hopes and dreams are all but dashed. I broadly welcome the new curriculum, but I am disappointed to see that Welsh Government hasn't taken the opportunity to pause its introduction at this juncture in order that schools have one full year, at least we hope, to recover somewhat from the past 15 months. I'll end, Mr Mayor, by issuing a plea, which I have no doubt is recognised, understood, and probably to a certain extent already underway here in Bridgend. And that plea is that we work with and support our school staff to the nth degree in taking time to specifically understand the changing or changed needs of our learners. On top of slowly introducing and teaching a brand new curriculum, this is a huge ask of our staff, and some may think it's part and parcel of the day job, but the building of a picture around an individual learner takes time and effort, and the cumulative impact of being away from the classroom and all its ancillary support may not be known for some significant time. It's a lost generation versus a determination to put things right. So whether we're talking about foundation phase or through to A-levels and apprenticeships, we need to do absolutely everything we can and within our power to dust down the hopes and the dreams that our learners held. We need to demonstrate that while there has been a big blip in the road, and it has been a big blip, the system and the people within it will do everything it and they can to help them get where they want to be. We owe them nothing less. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We've got 2 more contributors, and I just remind people that we are looking at a 3-minute per contribution. So we'll go to Councillor Manda Williams next.
Thanks very much. I have concerns regarding lack of spaces in primary schools in the borough, and I've given the example of Coity. It has no capacity, and 25 in-catchment nursery children were turned away this year. 32 were turned away last year. But this year, it's had an impact on the other schools in the area. Coitchurch, Litchard, Penavey and Pencoed Primary are also now full to capacity, so children are being turned away due to lack of spaces on their second choice as well now. And
Sorry,
this highlights...
Can I just ask Councillor Mary Hughes to turn her video camera off, please? Thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Right. This highlights that there are whole neighbouring communities that now have no capacity in local primary schools, and children are being sent in dribs and drabs to different schools throughout the county. I have significant concerns that despite schools being built too small on new estates, houses are still being allowed to be built, attracting further Section 106 money for school places. However, this money is being used elsewhere and not to alleviate pressures on the local school where it was intended. There are plans to resolve some of the issues, but they're years down the line. So Section 106 money, for example, is being used to build a new Welsh school, and the mop-up places for these primary schools who are now full will be the old Bro Ogw building, but that's several years away, and these children will then have to walk past 2 sparkling new schools to get to their primary school. Nothing has been done at the moment, and with COVID, well-being is key to everything that the children have been through lately. We should be looking at well-being. So I want to have assurances from the director and from the cabinet that well-being will be paramount in any decisions on providing adequate places, and not just money and Welsh medium or this and that. They need to think of the whole picture for the benefit and the well-being of children. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. And we'll go to Councillor Carolyn Webster next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There are 42 articles on the rights of a child as defined by the United Nations. I will highlight 5 of them. Article 1, the rights set out in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child apply to everyone under the age of 18. Article 2, the rights apply to every child, whatever their race, colour, gender, language, religion, ethnicity, disability, or any other status. Article 3, in all decisions and actions that concern children, the best interests of the child shall be a primary consideration. Article 4, the state must do all it can through passing legislation and creating administrative systems to promote and protect children's rights. And Article 23, disabled children have the right to enjoy a full life with dignity and to participate as far as possible in their community. The government should support disabled children and their families. I am pleased that there are schools in Bridgend County Borough which have received recognition for being a rights-supporting school. Indeed, I'm pleased that this local authority has always been meticulous in hearing the voice of the child when it comes to changes about their education. I'm delighted with future plans for Bridgend's super special school, Heronsbridge. I, for one, know that the value of this type of provision and the cost of not having such a provision outweighs the cost of providing. I will congratulate the leadership and look forward to it being delivered on time, on budget, and with the capacity it needs for our growing borough. There are 4 main towns in our borough: Bridgend, Porthcawl, Maesteg and Pencoed. I remain disappointed that there is still a lack of SEN unit in Porthcawl cluster. If the LDP gets the go-ahead from my fellow councillors for growth in Porthcawl, there are children who will not be able to be offered a place in a school in Porthcawl. Every child with an MLD or a sensory disability, including autism, who is not capable of learning in a mainstream class, has to be taxied out of the town at taxpayers' expense to be educated in another town, away from friends that they could look to grow away from siblings and stopping parents being able to build a relationship with the class teacher and the wider school. In other words, out of their community. Of course, I'm not referring to the children whose needs are so great that they need the specialist centralised provision of a school like Heronsbridge. I'm referring to the children who would attend one of the OBS units and MLD classes across the borough. Fantastic schools where great things have happened with children whose parents so often hear, "I don't know," as a clinical prognosis. Porthcawl, a growing town, doesn't have a single MLD class or a single OBS unit. Whilst again I sympathise with the issues that schools are in effect independent organisations, this is something on which the local authority can affect, can influence and can lead change. I go back to the UN on the rights of the child. Disabled children have the right to enjoy a full life with dignity and to participate as far as possible in their community. The government should support disabled children and their families. The local government should support these children where possible to be educated in their community and lead change which is inclusive and non-discriminatory. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. We don't have any further councillors now indicate to take part of this debate. It is a debate, and there's been quite a few statements made as well, but it's a debate for us all to join in with. If anybody has anything further to add to it. If not, no, we'll go back to Councillor Charles Smith then. Well, Councillor Pam Davies, have you just indicated? Councillor Pam Davies?
Yeah, sorry for jumping in. Just a few things. Number one, we can't do much without money. And our kids in Wales have much less capita per head, obviously, from Westminster down to the Welsh Assembly Government and then on to us and the local councils. Number two, I agree with, I am trying to get a place with a lady round the corner. She's got a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old that she can't get into the same school and she's just had another baby. But there is free transport for her. The only thing is she's going to be going to 2 different schools. And with winter coming on, she's got 3 youngsters under the age of 8, all to dress and get out in the mornings, etc. So it is really difficult. But at the end of the day, I have had various conversations with Lindsay, and I have to say that we have done extremely well in BCBC with all of our school children, keeping the free meals for breakfast as well as lunch, delivering them, even having them frozen, accommodating the children with vegetarian needs and other religious needs. So I have to say we've done extremely well and just in case anyone's wondering, we have loads and loads of templates that the other councils are taking from our example. But it is, a lot of it is about money, and without that, we can't do a lot more. And as I say, we have to stretch it round. Extremely difficult for the teachers when they have to have curriculums altered. They don't know whether they're going to rely on their courses work. They have to set all of the paperwork for them. The parents that have been furloughed have had to try and keep them going, etc. So it has been an unprecedented time. And hopefully we will see this time next year. Hopefully we'll be coming out of it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Thank you for that. Right, now we go to Councillor Charles Smith. We've got, I think, 10 minutes left.
Thank you, Chair, and I think Pam's contribution was helpful because it reminds us that things aren't only local, they're also national. I know we've got some guests in the meeting. I don't know whether Lindsay will want to give up some of his time for guests to comment, and that'll be up to him and your discretion, of course, as Chair. But there are Bridgend priorities and national priorities, and the Bridgend priorities we're already working on. And in answer to some of the comments, all I can promise is that we will carry on with those priorities, not necessarily in this order, but if I could mention a few, we will be building new 21st century primary schools in North Kennelly, Kenfig Hill and Porthcawl, including a replacement Welsh medium school at Kennelly and a seedling Welsh medium primary at Porthcawl. We will be investing in additional Welsh medium and English medium primary education in Bracla. We will provide a replacement for Heronsbridge School at Island Farm, we hope, with the ambition of creating the best special school in Wales. We'll continue to provide nursery education above statutory levels throughout the county, and that is a policy which sets us apart from many local education authorities in Wales. We'll ensure that all our secondary schools have sixth forms, with a collaborative 21st century approach to making unviable classes viable through blended learning, supported by the individual deployment of laptops to all post-16 learners in our schools. We'll investigate the potential for a cross-county travel card for all post-16 learners. We'll continue in our partnerships with Bridgend College and other post-16 providers, including post-16 provision shared with Pencode Comprehensive School at Coleg Pen-y-bont in the town of Pencode. And following its positive consultation process, we'll progress the Bridgend Town Centre Master Plan and kickstart this in partnership with Bridgend College by facilitating its move from Cowbridge Road to a brand new town centre campus on the Cheapside Police Station site. And we'll develop our family support services and help strategy to ensure an early help strategy to ensure the right support is delivered by the right people at the right time to those who require it. On the national level, we'll engage positively, as we always have done, in national debate with Welsh Government, the UK Government, the WLGA, Central South Consortium and other regional bodies. And we'll continue to be actively involved in wider educational issues such as curriculum reform to ensure all Bridgend schools provide excellent learning experience for all pupils. We'll look at high stakes exams and internally assessed coursework and advise on assessment of learning and assessment for learning. And we'll take part in a national debate which will take place about the role of GCSEs and what role they have in a new world where students may not leave education age 16 anymore. There's the long-standing problem of vocational studies and their parity of esteem with academic programs, and we are very keen on things like the young junior apprentice schemes. Additional learning need reform, we'll support that by continuing to commit fully and enthusiastically to Welsh Government's ALN Needs and Educational Tribunal Act to ensure that children and young people with additional needs in Bridgend receive the best possible support. We support the Welsh Government's ambitions for Welsh language and culture. We support childcare and education for our youngest learners. We'll debate catchment areas and parental choice regarding school admissions, and we'll press for school budgets and the general funding of local government services to be uplifted. There's an opportunity for all councillors now to look at planning law and the way that the planning system supports private housing development, but doesn't necessarily support the infrastructure to go with it. So, for instance, primary schools, as somebody has said earlier, can get built under Section 106 if the development is huge enough. And Section 106 isn't something which satisfies people. It usually disappoints, to be honest. But there's a problem with secondary education. Any Section 106 contribution to secondary education is invariably inadequate and disappointing and doesn't fulfill its promises. So there's an opportunity there for all our councillors to keep a close eye on the replacement LDP as it progresses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Can I now ask Lindsay Harvey, yourself, or any colleagues to bring the debate to a close, and any comments, thoughts you're going to give?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smith, as well, and elected members. I wrote at the start of a very recent council report that last year was a unique or challenging year. I think it's fair to say it has been. And the effect of COVID-19 has been significant, both in terms of impact on learners and obviously staff. And, you know, I know it's been very challenging for teachers and staff in schools, but also for officers who have worked tirelessly over the last 16 months to make sure services have been delivered safely and effectively. And an example of this commitment, Mr. Mayor, is when you look in the virtual meeting we're in at the moment, I have all my senior leadership team and also all the senior leadership team from Central South Consortium who are very firm partners with us in this process. I'm also indebted, as Councillor Smith said, to Team Bridgend, and I believe elected members are part of this wider team, and I'm indebted to elected members for their phenomenal support over the last 16 months, and also grateful for their contributions at today's debate. So with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to wrap up very quickly on some of the key points that were raised. First of all, I am grateful to Councillor Alex Williams, not just for his comments today, but for a really helpful discussion with him yesterday. Obviously, there is a statutory requirement on the local authority to increase the number of Welsh speakers. And as part of our Welsh Education Strategic Plan, we are keen to work with all stakeholders to develop this. There are challenges, I accept those readily, especially in the east of the county, but part of the strategic proposals we'll have in place that we'll look, which we're looking to publish in January, actually, will set out our stall really of how we hope to support all areas and challenges in this particular area going forward. Again, moving to Councillor Penhill-Thomas's comments, he raises really important issues here, not least the lessons learned from the pandemic and how vital they are to the success of the system going forward. But I absolutely agree with Councillor Penhill-Thomas in that we must focus on emotional and physical well-being for all our learners to make sure that they are cared for going forward. And I'm sure all elected members and officers on this call will agree. Again, Councillor Amanda Williams raises some really important points around the challenges with school admissions and school places. There has been a task and finish group that has been established to look at these challenges. Inevitably, when you look at new school bills, they take a while to come to fruition, and there are challenges until they are built. We are looking at alternatives, obviously, in the meantime. But again, Councillor Williams picked up the notion of really focusing on learners and their needs. So obviously that's going in line with what I've said about Councillor Penhill-Thomas's. We are committed to absolutely making sure that in line with improving the school estate, we focus on the well-being of learners. Moving on to Councillor Webster's points, again, critical issues that Councillor Webster has brought up with regard to our commitment to the UNCRC and to the 5 areas that Councillor Webster identified in her input. And absolutely, I'm with you, having the ambition from the leader, and Councillor Smith has been very clear. We want to make sure that the new special school in Bridgend is sector leading and to be the best in Wales, and I'm committed to making that happen. Again, though, I think Councillor Webster raises important points around the importance of establishing local provision, especially with learners with learning needs. Because again, a lot of these learners, their needs are such that long taxi journeys, for example, are not conducive to their well-being. So again, we are looking, and certainly we've been committed to over the last 2 years in developing more specialist support, not just within schools, but within the classes. And finally, Mr. Mayor, just picking up a point that Councillor Pam Davis has raised. Again, I am very grateful to Councillor Pam Davis and other members for speaking to me very openly with some of the challenges, and we do our best to resolve them. But I think the issue is that alongside some of the challenges we have, funding is obviously an issue, especially when we look at curriculum and ALN reform. So I want to be short and sharp there, Mr. Mayor, if I could. The only person I would, again, I'm indebted to all my colleagues to be here, but I'm particularly pleased to have Clara Seary here today, who's Managing Director of Central South Consortium. And with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'd like her to invite her in to say a few words, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, if you can, yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Clara, if you...
Thank you, everybody. I think I want to reassure all of the elected members that Central South is going to carry on working with officers in Bridgend to make sure that all of the schools across the borough have the best quality provision for the children and young people. We know that Curriculum for Wales is coming in. It is a huge amount of stress on schools, but we are confident that schools will be ready for this and that they have the right support, both in terms of professional learning and resources and classroom practice. So our focus is very much around enabling schools to be able to meet the needs of the children and young people within their classes, and we will carry on, as I say, working in partnership with schools and the local authority to make sure that that happens.
Okay, thank you, Clara. Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Lindsay. And I know that maybe, well, there's a lot of members who haven't spoken, but even after the debate today, if members have ideas, thoughts, suggestions, I'm sure the Cabinet are there to listen. You just need to get in touch by email or whatever. Don't sit back and wait for a debate. If you've got thoughts, get in touch with the appropriate cabinet member, whether it's education or anything. So thank you all for your contributions today. We've just gone almost 31 minutes, we're almost bang on 30 minutes. So that's our first debate for a long time, and I think we'll be having ones every 3 months. So thank you everybody for your contributions on that debate on item 14, and I'm sure the cabinet, I know the cabinet and leader are listening. And the last item is 16 urgent items, which are not been notified of any. So I'm sure you'll all be glad to hear that it's 17:30 and we've actually managed to get to the end of the agenda.